Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I have traded in my Volkswagen GTI for a 2021 Ford Mustang Mach-E. Yep, that is right, I am living the EV life. Well, only for 24 hours. Now this video would not be possible without Acton Ford in Acton, Massachusetts for giving me this opportunity to live with the Mustang Mach-E for an entire day and understand some of the limitations and possibly even some of the benefits of owning an electric car. So unlike all the other vehicles I filmed and featured on the channel, where we do proper walkarounds, test drives, and then I give you 5 reasons why you should buy the vehicle I'm filming, this time around I documented the last 21 hours with the Mustang Mach-E, not only as a journalist, but also as a consumer as well, to understand battery life, range, but also to see if the Mustang Mach-E really is a true competitor to the Tesla Model Y, and also see if the Mustang Mach-E should be the next EV in your driveway. So to get you up to speed on where I'm at with the Mustang Mach-E, let's recap the last 21 hours. Without stating the obvious, my time with the Mach-E began at the dealership with a fully charged battery, and my initial goal was to put miles on this EV and get a better understanding of how this crossover performed, both in the city and on the highway. The first destination was to drive to Lars Anderson Auto Museum, which was about a 30-mile trip, as I wanted to get some photos for Instagram, but I also felt that it was fitting to bring a new generation of automotive history to a place that houses the oldest collection of cars. On my way down, I experimented with different drive modes, and concluded that unbridled not only was the most engaging, but the regenerative braking was actually at its strongest in this mode, even without using the one-pedal driving feature. So the last time I was behind the wheel of the Mustang Mach-E, it was during the review, and I learned quite a lot about this crossover in the 25 minutes of driving it. However, I've learned a lot more while driving this vehicle around town and putting some miles on it and learning its characteristics and the different drive modes, because in the review we were only in unbridled, and I've already put this car in Whisper and Engage, and I'm noticing a few different driving styles within those 3 different drive modes. Now, in my opinion, I prefer going with unbridled because that's the more engaging driving experience. You feel the power a lot more. Throttle response and steering input is so much better, especially as a car enthusiast. However, one thing that I didn't think I was going to like, but I prefer a lot more now that I've driven this vehicle for about, I'd say, an hour and a half now, is that the regenerative braking kicks in unbridled more so than in Engage and Whisper, which to me kind of surprises me, because I would have thought that regenerative braking would be a lot more stronger in the other 2 drive modes than unbridled. Now, I have noticed I'm using less battery life in unbridled than I did in Whisper and Engage, which is a bit of a shock to me, no pun intended. And you can definitely drive in this mode all the time. I think with Whisper and Engage, probably more so on the highway, although what I don't like is that you get more of a loose steering, you get more of this laid-back driving experience that maybe some of you will like, but I prefer having the steering be more weighted and kind of feel that sense of being in a sports car, especially with this being a Mustang. So currently we have 162 miles of range with 88% battery life, and what I have noticed, the longer I drive, that mileage doesn't drop as much as it did. When I first got the Mach-E, it had 200 miles of range and it dropped to like 170 rather quickly. But what I've noticed is that in the last 15 to 20 miles, that droppage has slowed quite a bit, and it's given me a little more confidence to take this vehicle out a little longer and drive it a lot more. And what we're gonna do in this video as well is charge it at a DC charging station and see what the charge times are in real life. At this point, I've probably driven about 50 miles, and as I stated, I noticed the battery range was getting more optimistic the longer I was behind the wheel. But also the range being displayed was becoming far more accurate. Now keep in mind, it was below freezing, so exterior temperature and climate control were affecting range, and that's something I'll get into in a minute. What really impressed me was how smooth and refined the Mustang Mach-E felt, and when cornering it was very composed, much like a sports car, as body roll was held to a minimum. Despite being a crossover, it doesn't drive like one, and in fact handles more like a luxury vehicle rather than most Fords in the lineup. Getting back to efficiency, My initial theory as to why I was experiencing better range in unbridled mode simply came down to throttle response, but also with regenerative braking playing a minor role in my driving style, I could feather the brake pedal when stopping. And overall, when looking at how the Mach-E was rating my driving, I was scoring high percentages. As I continued driving around, my positive feelings towards the interior didn't change from what I said in my review, as the seats were very comfortable, but I also had no issue using the massive 15.5-inch touchscreen, reinforcing my opinion that the cabin was a step up from the Tesla Model Y. Now, one of the key differences with the Mustang Mach-E compared to the Tesla Model Y is the interior comfort and refinement. With the Tesla Model Y, there really isn't much of an interior at all. You have the 15-inch touchscreen, but that's basically it. You'll have two buttons on the steering wheel, but we're talking a very simplistic and minimalistic interior compared to the Mustang Mach-E. You have a gauge cluster, you have this 15.5-inch touchscreen, you also have physical buttons on the steering wheel. You have more of that, normal vehicle interior that you're used to driving and experiencing on a daily basis. And to me, I think it makes the Mustang Mach-E feel more premium, even though Ford isn't considered a luxury brand, but it definitely feels more upscale than the Model Y. And if you are drawn in by technology, of course you're gonna like the Model Y, because you have the YouTube and you have the ability to play video games, and also features that you have where you can customize things through the 15-inch screen rather than using buttons like old school technology. So I get that, but I really think that if you are on the fence and you really don't want that futuristic feel, then the Mustang Mach-E is really that nice gradual progression where you don't feel as though you're walking into the future, say 2030, like 10 years into the future, where I think the Model Y, it's a whole different vehicle for a completely different generation. As the miles kept ticking up, I gradually became more aware of the battery life. And I'm sure while filming a dozen or so takes of getting drive-by shots for a potential upcoming video, I was probably affecting range. As the sun began to set, the temperature started dropping below 20 degrees, and that's when I really paid attention to the breakdown of energy usage. And what I found was that climate control would consistently make up 30 to 35% of battery usage, even with the fan set to its lowest speed and interior temperature set to around 67 degrees. While external temperature was anywhere between 8 to 12% of battery usage. But I continued to maintain a battery life above 70%, and not once did I feel I was getting an inaccurate reading for remaining range, and you can see from the numbers I drove very conservatively during this period of time. Knowing that the biggest challenge of making sure the Mach-E was plugged in overnight or had enough charge for the next morning was lying ahead, I met up with my friend, an electric car enthusiast, to take some photos of his Porsche Taycan with the Mach-E, and to demonstrate the EV charging networks, as I now had a range of 106 miles and 55% battery life. So we took a quick ride to the nearest Electrify America charging station that's rated at 150 kilowatts to get my first real experience of living the EV life. Unfortunately, recharging didn't go as smooth as anticipated, and instead of 150 kilowatts, the Mach-E was only recharging at 35 kilowatts, which meant in about 15 minutes I only experienced an increase of 10% battery life, or somewhere around an additional 15 miles of range. Obviously, under normal circumstances, I would have grabbed dinner at the mall and wasted time window shopping. But my top priority was still making sure I wake up the next morning with enough range so I could continue filming and get back to the dealership. Since I didn't have an at-home charger, it was off to Home Depot to find an extension cord just to keep the Mach-E plugged in at night, with temperatures forecasted to be around 15 degrees. By using Ford's mobile charger that came with the Mach-E, I at least had some peace of mind while I slept. Fast forwarding about 8 hours to the next morning, and I was back to 74% battery life from 59%, with about 124 miles of range to work with, which would be adequate if I had to go run errands. As you can tell, I'm not prepared to own an EV, and this is most certainly a learning experience if you're on the fence about whether to take the leap or not. After filming a few more rolling shots and recording the intro for this video, I did one last drive before returning to the Electrify America charging station, with only 84 miles of range and 53% battery life remaining. Once again, at the same station, I was only recharging at around 37 kilowatts, but this time I was in no rush to leave, and instead, I decided to answer a couple of questions you guys asked me on Instagram about the Ford Mustang Mach-E. So overall, what has it been like to drive this crossover? And do I still feel the same way I did a few weeks ago when I test drove the Mustang Mach-E? And I had to be completely honest here. I have really enjoyed my time with this vehicle. It has been so much fun to drive around. And, even though I prefer the sound of gas-powered engines, I prefer, feeling the transition of different gears, I have had such a blast. I want to keep driving this. I actually am feeling disappointed that I have to drop this off in about an hour because it is so smooth, it is relaxing, but also I still feel that it feels premium. The Mustang Mach-E, and I had a question as to why is this vehicle starting to steal market share away from the Tesla Model Y, despite the fact that it's just arrived at dealers. What is it that's drawing people into this vehicle? Because it is a Ford. We don't look at Fords as being luxurious or being the most refined, especially where, you'd probably think maybe Lincoln, maybe you'd go German at that point. But I really think Ford put a lot of effort into this vehicle. You can see it with the interior layout. You can feel it when it comes to the driving experience and driving dynamics. This is a special vehicle. It really is. And, I said that the Mustang Mach-E might be the Model Y, or actually Model T. I'm getting all the models mixed up, but the Model T of my generation. And after 24 hours, I truly believe that. I stand by that statement because Ford really spent a lot of time on this vehicle, and I think it's going to go a long way with a lot of with consumers, because when you look at the way it's designed and laid out, it feels conventional, and I felt that way the minute I stepped inside when I did the review, and it just feels natural. It's a natural progression from a gas-powered vehicle to an EV, and it's not that radical change from Tesla, because when you look at Tesla, you're walking into a vehicle that is about 10 years into the future. When you don't have, push button start, you have everything all on that 15-inch infotainment system. That's a lot to digest and take in if you're hopping in from, say, like an average Honda or, Toyota. That's a lot to deal with in a short period of time. And I noticed that when I went into the Tesla store, and there were customers that had a ton of questions. And I don't see that when it comes to regular dealerships, where people are just like, all right, give me the keys and I'll go experience it. But it's not like that with electric vehicles. But I think with the Mustang Mach-E, you can definitely walk into this vehicle, put into drive, and you're on your way. You can have adventures. And that's one of the reasons why I think the Mustang Mach-E is going to do very well, not only in the short term, but in the long term. I think, Ford definitely has a vehicle that can seriously compete with the Model Y. Now, another question that I received on Instagram was best feature that isn't immediately apparent in a short test drive. Now, with the Mustang Mach-E, I feel like there isn't a whole bunch of features that you would see in a Tesla. So with Tesla, I could sit there for an hour and find really cool technological features that would really interest me as a millennial. But I think having this car for 24 hours reinforces the idea that the Mustang Mach-E is very well put together. It feels luxurious, it feels premium. And the thing is, too, I had a lot of people laugh at me for saying that the Mustang Mach-E feels premium compared to a Tesla, and that it feels like a luxury vehicle to a Tesla. But I think it does. The seats are very plush, they are supportive, and just the way this vehicle is designed, I keep coming back to the design and interior layout, it feels nice. It really does. Now, I'm not saying you don't have, leather-stitched dashboard. You don't have, the nicest and soft touch padding that you're going to have in luxury vehicles. But when it comes to the driving dynamics, how quiet it is, the steering input, it feels luxurious. And I think that's what's really important if you are looking for an EV. And especially now when you have the tax credits that come into play. You can buy this for under $50,000 after those tax credits. And I think you're getting a lot of vehicle for the price. And I think that's what the overall feature that I take away after 24 hours is that this vehicle does feel premium. It's not just the initial reactions that I had, for 30 minutes. It's a legitimate feeling that the Mustang Mach-E is one of the most refined Fords I've ever featured, I've ever driven, not only on this channel but in my life in the 10 to 11 years that I've had my license. I've not driven a Ford that's felt like this, and that's what's really important because when you're looking at EVs right now, everyone's trying to draw you in with the technology and this futuristic experience, but are they giving you luxury? Are they giving you refinement? And I think for some brands, not necessarily. Especially when you look at Chevrolet with the Bolt. Now I understand, that's around $30,000. It's not a luxury vehicle. But when you're buying a vehicle that is efficient, you're buying a vehicle that's futuristic, you also want to have that comfort as well. And I think that's exactly what the Ford Mustang Mach-E offers. For those wondering, after 40 minutes on the charger, I gained 22% battery life and now had 142 miles of range, which honestly wasn't that bad, because most likely you'd go get a coffee and breakfast, or unlike me, you'd have the proper equipment to charge at home, so this stop would be unnecessary. Ultimately, I enjoyed driving the Mach-E, but the lack of fast charging stations in my area and worrying about cold temperatures and climate control depleting battery life took away from my overall excitement. But if you're prepared and not a greenhorn like me when it comes to EVs, the Mustang Mach-E could most certainly be your daily driver, as I traveled close to 200 miles in the 24 hours of having this crossover. And being unbiased, I totally understand why more Americans are making the switch, simply because if you do your research and are ready to own an EV, you'll never have to worry about range anxiety. So to wrap up this video, what is my final verdict for the Mustang Mach-E? Do I still feel that it's a game changer in the EV world? And after 24 hours, I'm going to stick by my statement and say that it is the Model T of this generation and of this century. And it's really because Ford gave us a vehicle that looks good, it's efficient, and it performs really well. When you look at other competitors, and I'm going to stick outside of Tesla because I know a lot of people love Teslas, and I think Tesla still is right now the benchmark for this segment, for this new generation of vehicles. But when you compare it to the Volkswagen ID4, Chevrolet Bolt, and I think this would also fall under the category of, say, maybe an Audi e-tron, and, a Jaguar I-Pace, is that it's priced reasonably. When you're looking at a price range around $50,000 for the premium, the one that we're in right now, and then, of course, when you get those tax credits, now you're looking at under $50,000, I think you're receiving quite a lot for that price. But also, when you compare it to the ID4, I think the ID4 falls a bit short, not only when it comes to performance, but also range as well. And from what I've seen from the initial reviews, I'm not a huge fan of the interior layout. I have to experience it, and hopefully I will be getting my hands on one in the next week or two, because I really want to compare and contrast. But I think the ID4 isn't the game changer that Volkswagen is looking for right now. I don't think it's that. It's not that Volkswagen Beetle of the 21st century, and I know a lot of people are trying to say that, but I don't know if it's that yet. I think Volkswagen is moving in the right direction, but I don't know if it's there yet. Then when you look at the Chevrolet Bolt, of course, it's a cheaper vehicle, and I don't know, I think Chevrolet and GM in general, they're not going to be the leaders in the EV world. I don't believe that at all. Even though they want to think that they are, and that they want to be the game changers, and they want to outdo Norway, they're not going to be the ones that do it. But I think the Ford Mustang Mach-E is a great balance of performance, refinement, and then having that pricing, because it undercuts the Audi e-tron, it undercuts the Jaguar I-Pace, and I think it's a better vehicle than the Jaguar I-Pace. I wouldn't go as far to say it's a better vehicle in terms of technology when it comes to the Audi e-tron, but if you're on a strict budget, the Mustang Mach-E is a great vehicle. It's that great, it's that great all-around EV that you're looking for. And I do think that it is going to be that game changer. Now, also, again, if you are someone who's seriously looking at buying an EV and you already have that at-home charger, then I think that going with the Mustang Mach-E over a Tesla Model Y is the better decision. I truly believe that, because the Tesla Model Y, in my opinion, not only when it comes to the technology aspect, that you're going to have to spend a lot of time learning it, I don't think it's the best looking vehicle out there at all. And I think if you're looking for something a little more conventional, so it's familiar, then you're gonna want to go with the Mustang Mach-E. And after 24 hours, I don't want to give the keys back to the dealer. I really don't. I've enjoyed my time with this. I could see myself driving this Monday through Friday and have my, my fun, car community car, or my car enthusiast car on the weekends. I can totally see that, and I've really enjoyed my time with this vehicle. I hope to have more opportunities in the future with more EVs to experience them, not only for 24 hours, but maybe in the future, maybe for like a week, just to get a full experience. But I have to say, if you're looking at buying an EV, definitely consider the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Take it out for a test drive, maybe even experience it for a day, because I think you're going to be very impressed with what Ford has done here, because this does not feel like a Ford at all. Ford spent a lot of time on this, and you can definitely see that for sure, and I tip my hat off to them, because they've given us a vehicle that could really rival Tesla in many ways. And I think that if you are looking for an EV around $50,000, this has to be on your list of considerations for sure. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also, once again, huge thank you to Acton Ford in Acton, Massachusetts for giving me this opportunity to experience this vehicle, and also even experience some of the drawbacks and some of the limitations that EVs still have today in 2021. And I will see you guys next time.